mission, so we help organizations to become more customer-centric themselves. And we do this for different clients. I'm not going to go into this, but if there's one thing you should know about service design, because I think most of you already have a basic understanding of what service design means, the one thing you should keep in mind is that the customer is the most important. Everything we do is from the customer's perspective. So what I always want to do is to really know my customer. And I like this image, the delivery gap. So 80% of companies believe they deliver a superior proposition, but if you ask their customers, only 8% of their customers would agree. So there's this huge gap between what companies think they should deliver and what customers actually want and what they need. And I believe that it is our mission as service designers to make this gap as small as possible and to understand our customers and deliver something they can actually work with and they actually want. So let's talk about the case. Some of you, I saw in the chat, already been to Amsterdam. Some of you are already living in Amsterdam. This is my city, the beautiful city of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We have over 850,000 inhabitants, which is actually still pretty small, not even a million. And there's a wide range of inhabitants. So it goes from Mark to Mohammed, from baby to granny, from PhD student to garbage collector. And there are all those people living in our city. And you can imagine that as a municipality of this city, it's really hard to design one online service that is offering something for everybody. So how can you design something, an online service that can be used by all those different inhabitants and different people? Well, this was the question the city of Amsterdam asked us, Koos Service Design, in the winter of 2018. And they asked us, this is the research question, it's all about inclusive design. What are the barriers, the preferences and the needs of the people of Amsterdam concerning online service? And with online services, you can think about the website and the app. So what do they want? And in order to find an answer for this question, we first broke down this question in different components. So the research objective was first, what are the needs of these inhabitants? What do they want? Secondly, we looked at their preferences and their barriers. So what kind of apps do they like to use? How do they like to use it? Is it easy for them or not? Do they even own a computer or not? And lastly, we looked at the side of the municipality. How can they respond to these needs? And what kind of services should they offer to fulfill those needs? So what's their answer? And I'm going to talk you through this case. So how did we find answers to these questions? Well, there are three things we did. The first thing is we listened. So like I said, customer centricity is super important. And in this case, we talked to 57 inhabitants. And I think this is a good time to mention that this project was super fast and super short. I think we only spent around 1.5 months or 2 months in total on this project. We did 3 design sprints, in total 30 days. So 30 days and some preparation before and some closing up after, so that's really short. And we managed to speak to 57 inhabitants in this limited time. And the second thing we really wanted to do with this project is to verify solutions as soon as possible with real customers. And we did this in the form of design sprints. And we designed 3 prototypes. And I'm going to explain to you what the prototype is in a minute. And the last thing we wanted to do with this project is to create something that's clear and visual, and not some big elaborate reports. We all know those horrible things. Nobody's ever going to read into them. They're just somewhere behind in the folder on your computer. So we wanted to create something that's clear and visual and actually something you can work with, something you can use. So a simple model. So the first thing we wanted to do was to look at our customers. Who are those people? Like I said, there's so many different people living in the city. but we cannot research them all. So we decided to look into 3 target groups. And since it was all about online services, we didn't want to look into like bodily things. So it's more about how are they able to use it. This is a really weird sentence, but we we wanted to look at how they're using online services. So it doesn't really make sense to look at people with a disability like a walking disorder or things like that, because it's more about the online experience. So we came up with these 3 target audiences. First of all, inhabitants with a minor mental disability, inhabitants from a different cultural background, and seniors of 75 years of age and older. Yeah, I was just about to ask you.
Yes, before going further, could you explain a little bit why did you choose specifically these 3 audiences? Because they all seem a little bit to the extreme. It's very important for the inclusivity, but what about, I don't know, like an average people from Amsterdam?
Yeah. Well, we figured that if we design something that those outliers can use, then the majority can use it as well. So we wanted to start with the extremes, and we had the assumption that it's also usable for the majority, because it's easier to make something too difficult instead of making something too hard. So that's a really big pitfall we didn't want to fall into. And we also noticed, and we're already giving a bit of a spoiler, that the middle target group, so the inhabitants from a different cultural background, we made the assumption beforehand that their experience would be different because of their backgrounds. But while conducting the interviews and talking with those people, we realized that this was our limited view of those people, and we realized that we cannot put them in this box. We should just see them as adults, as grown-ups living in Amsterdam, instead of giving them the label of, oh, you're living in Amsterdam and from Morocco or from Suriname, or it doesn't really matter because they're inhabitants of the city. Are there any more questions?
Not in the chat.
All right, then I'm gonna continue. So we had those 3 target audiences, and we started with conducting interviews, and we did in-depth interviews of 60 minutes each. And I really like this part of the research because we did home interviews. And I live in Amsterdam. I was born here, and for me it was really special to visit all those houses and to sit on the couch of somebody and to go to a different district and to walk into somebody's house and have a cat on my lap while conducting this interview. And especially because there was this lady, and she was from Arabic country, so she was dressed with this jihad and like, I only know the Dutch word, the thing of your hair, the scarf, and she was really covered. And she led me into her house, and she had a baby on her lap. And suddenly she was just breastfeeding the baby. And I was like, whoa, you really trust me and you really invite me and welcome me in your house. So it was really nice to connect with all those different inhabitants of the city. And doing home interviews gave me a lot of extra information as well. So before I'm going to show you some results, I want you to think for yourself, what do you think the research findings would be if you look at those different audiences? So maybe you think, oh, the seniors, I don't think they can use smartphones. They have this old-fashioned phone. And maybe you think, the minor disability, maybe they don't want to do everything themselves. Maybe they have a neighbor or a friend who helps them. Think about it for a minute, because this is always hard that you have your own framework, your own state of mind. So for the first audience, inhabitants with a minor disability, 3 things really, very important for me. So I saw those 3 things. The first quote I heard was, inclusiveness is nice, but self-sufficiency is much more important. That's one thing they said. A second person said to me, I have all my administration on paper on lockdown. That's the safest way. And the third person said, I don't use the chat function. It's too much effort. I'm lazy. I rather call. So it's just really interesting for me that they are focused on privacy and they're afraid of hackers. I didn't expect this to happen. And they are really all about being acknowledged. They talked about doing administration, about being lazy, about choosing the safest way, the easiest way. And it's really interesting to talk with these people. And I'm not gonna share all the insights with you, but those are three things that really surprised me.
Serena, there is a question. How did you recruit people for the interviews?
Yeah, that's a good question. For the two other target groups, we used a recruitment agency, so they helped us. But with this target audience, it was a bit harder to find participants.
Which one?
The minor disability.
Mm-hmm.
So we had two different ways to get in contact with them. One was to go to Cordaan, which is a healthcare institution in Amsterdam. So they helped us with representatives, because those people really like to talk about their disability and to be transparent about it. And they helped us a lot. And we also went to the, we call it the groenvoorziening, the people that work for the municipality who do the garbage collecting and to clean all the gardens in the city. So they helped us as well.
But culturally speaking, in Netherlands, how approachable people are. So if you just ask a stranger whether you can come to their home and have an interview, what's the probability they would say yes?
I think it's higher than other countries because we also do this in Portugal and we see it's harder to get into people's houses. We have those recruitment agencies where people get paid for it. So they're more likely to invite you to your house because they sign up for it beforehand.
I see.
Yeah. Are there any more questions?
Maybe the last one from my side is how comfortable people feel when you come to their house, because from one hand they are on the safe side, so they are at home, but at the same time they might be more reserved because there is a stranger in my house. How does it work?
Well, I would actually say the opposite, because sometimes when you have a person in this clean white meeting room, they feel like they're being interrogated by a researcher and it's really, they have to give the right answer. And when you're going to somebody's house, they're in control. It's their safe side, and they feel more comfortable to share their private information and to just have a neutral conversation.
Super. And there are two more comments. I want just to have a second to read them and give them to you. One is basically commenting on what you said, is that self-sufficiency is actually bigger than inclusiveness. Then
as a comment,
the comment is the same again, that inclusiveness actually led us to self-sufficiency. And there is a question about the minor mental disability. What does it mean?
So first about the inclusiveness and self-sufficiency. This is not a research finding. This is a quote somebody said. So don't see it as a finding or something that counts for the whole target audience. It's just something that I found interesting. So these people want to be seen, they want to be recognized, they want to be acknowledged. They don't want to be seen for their disabilities, but they want to be seen for all the things they can do. And for the second comment, with minor mental disability, we mean persons that, for example, have a lower IQ. They have difficulties with reading people, with understanding people. I'm not sure, but I think it could also be persons with autism and things like that. Yeah. So I think we can continue, right?
Yes, sure.
So for the second target audience, we had inhabitants with a different cultural background and 3 quotes. One of them is, I don't use 60% of my apps. they have to be relevant for me. Another person said, I try to do everything by email. That way I have it written down on paper in case something goes wrong. And a third person said, we are Amsterdammers, Amsterdam people. Information can be in Dutch, otherwise you'll never learn. So what struck me was that they want to be part of the city. They don't want to have a separate website where they can read everything in their own language. They want to be seen and heard for who they are, for being part of Amsterdam. And like I already said, we made this assumption that their experience would be different, and actually it's not. And we realized that these people, these adults living in Amsterdam, really like efficiency. They don't like apps they don't use anymore. They just want something that's working fast, and that's something that makes their lives easy and better. And let's move to the third target audience, seniors. 3 quotes again. I am afraid I will delete everything if I try to figure it out by myself. And another person said, you need to push yourself to learn and try to keep up. And I'm not against smartphones, but I like to keep them at bay. It's nice and quiet like this. So for this, you can see some pictures I took during the interviews, and you can see Corrie and Aad, the elderly couple in the middle. And for me, they're really representative about this target audience. Because Corrie, the lady, she has 2 of the newest smartphones in front of her. And her husband, he is still using the white phone you can see on the top. So he has to use the dial thing. And he's really like, I'm not gonna go into this. I don't want to change. Just let me use my old ways and it's fine. And Corrie, the lady, she said she really wants to keep up and use all the newest technologies and things like that. And this is what we saw in most of the seniors. There's a really big divide between how used they are to online services. So we did a lot of interviews and we had a lot of data. And at this moment, we had to move from the problem fit to the solution fit. So we had to analyze everything we did in the research. And I see you have a question.
Yes. Before we go further, for the people from different cultural background, were they, how it's said here, highly educated migrants? So did they speak proper English, if not Dutch, or they were from a different background?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because we used a recruitment agency, we had a lot of participants who were already living in Amsterdam for a long time. So we didn't look at people who just got into the city. Most of them lived, I think, for 5 years at least. Some of them were second, how do you call it? Second immigrants?
Second generation.
Second generation immigrants, exactly. So their parents are born in a different country, but they are born in Amsterdam. So yeah, they just felt like they're Dutch because they are, yeah.
It's clear.
Yeah. So we did all the in-depth interviews, and like I said, we tried to do them at home. And now it was time for us to go to the second phase, to analyze all the data, to map the needs, and to find problems, to find opportunities for improvement, and to go to the solution fit. So this is the process we took. Start with in-depth interviews, analyze, map needs, look for solutions, create a prototype, perform user tests. And we did this for all the 3 sprints. And in the end, we were able to compare the 3 sprints with each other and to visualize the insights. So for each target group, we did a sprint like this. So we did 3 times a sprint of 10 days each. And within the 10 days, we had the interviewing. Are there any questions about this?
Maybe you can, or you can explain it later or now. I mean, what was the structure of the sprint? And maybe even more interesting, who were the participants of the sprint? Was it only people from the agency, or were you inviting the people from the city administration?
Yeah. This sprint we did really closely together with the city of Amsterdam, with the municipality, because they're already quite high level of service design experience. So they were able to do the sprint with us. We brought them to the interviews with us, not to do the questioning, but to observe and to learn from it. We did the sprint, but we asked them to be there at key moments. So for example, after analyzing the interviews, we had a small presentation of 1 hour for all the key stakeholders. And we invited them to learn from the insights and to help us decide which one are the most important insights and what we should work on for the next phase. And we also invited them for the prototype testing, but I'm gonna explain it in a minute. So let me continue.
There is a question. Any tips to identify the insights?
Well, yes, because identifying insights is super hard and a super big part of your projects. I think we took 2 or 3 days for each sprint to do this. And the hardest thing was that since we did qualitative research, so we did in-depth interviews, you don't know what you're gonna find. So you don't know what model you can use because you don't know what the answer is gonna be. And in this case, we used 2 models to plot our insights. Well, maybe you can count 3 models. So the first thing was just writing all your quotes from your interview on sticky notes, on Post-its, cluster them together. And then you already have some insights. You already have your main things popping up. So this already helps you. The second thing we did is we tried to put it in a chronological order and really high level. So what are the 4 things that everybody does when conducting a service at a municipality? And the third thing we did was we plotted them on the value pyramid, and I have some slides about it, so bear with me, I'm gonna talk about it in a minute. Oh, you're on mute.
There were 2 more questions on the interview side. Well, first is, did you do, as far as I understand, do you have anonymous surveys? So basically, did you do quantitative together with the qualitative? And
yeah, for this research, we only did qualitative research. So because we only had 10 days for sprints, we didn't have time to combine research methods, although it's advised to do so. We just did the interviews and analyzing it like the day after and really tried to fit everything in 10 days.
I see. And there is a question you probably mostly answered it about how to get people to agree to have an interview at home. Basically, this was the precondition for the interview, right?
Yeah, and the recruitment agency also helped us with it. So in the Netherlands, you have those agencies and you can just sign up and people get paid for having an interview at their home. I think for other countries, you can look at, are there plenty of things, I think. I only know the Dutch examples, sorry.
It's okay, thank you.
Yes?
Yes, we can move on.
Okay. So we had those 3 sprints, and on the 4th bullet point, you see create a prototype and perform a test. And you might think, what is a prototype again? And a prototype is this really, it's like a facade. So when you think about those old Western movies, you have those streets and you can see all the saloons and the shops. And in the movies, they look real, but if you look behind it, there's no building behind it. So that's exactly what a prototype is. It looks good enough, it looks real, but it's not working. It's just to create a sort of first experience, to create a test. Because you don't want to spend a lot of time and money on building something, and after you launched it, realizing that's not something that people actually want. So for this, I have one example. This is our prototype. So for the seniors, we realized that they are really insecure about their ability to use online services. So they're really afraid to make mistakes, and they didn't want to try different things. So they're really hesitant, and they always try to call or to go to the service desk. So we had the how might we question, how might we enable them to use online services and still feel safe and in control, and how can we do that? So we had a little bit of brainstorm, and we ended up with this prototype. And this is actually built in Keynote. And we just made a print screen of the website of the municipality. And we added this thing over here. It's a video chat. And actually it's just my colleague, Nienke. We thought she looked nice that day, and we filmed her. And she pretended to be a chatbot. So she said, "Hey, I am Nienke from the municipality of Amsterdam. How can I help you?" And we created this fake video chat buttons here. And we just asked participants in a user test to try it out and to see if they liked it, if they were able to use it or not. And of course, we had our questions with the prototype test as well. So we could really go into deep and ask why many, many times. We also tested some other things. So on the right, you see the video of with a hand clicking on something. We had the assumption that people are afraid to try something out. So what if you just show a tutorial video? Maybe it helps them to feel more likely to try it out themselves. So we had all those different options. We didn't build them, we just gave them something to talk about during the prototype test. And the prototype test itself took 1 day for each of the target audiences. So you can imagine that for the elderly people, the seniors, we had 1 day. We had 5 people coming over, because 5 people is usually enough to test your prototype. And we all had them in for an hour each, and to test our video chat and to tell us what they didn't like about it and what they liked about it. And at the same time, we invited our clients from the municipality to write sticky notes and to write down insights, so we could use them to learn from our prototypes. And the prototype is not something you build to sell an idea. It's always built to learn from it and to know if you found a solution that's worth building or worth realizing. I see some questions in the chat.
Yes, there are several questions. Basically, how many people of each group you took? You said 5, right?
5 for each group, yeah.
5 for each group.
With 5 people, you generally have 80% of the insights, so that's enough to do an iteration and to move on to the next phase.
How did you decide what part of the service to prototype? Why did you prototype exactly this thing?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. We did our analysis, so we knew what the biggest problems and barriers were, and we also talked with the clients, so we knew what they found interesting and what their vision was. So we used those things together, and we had all our interviews, so we knew what the voice of the customer was, and they guided us to like this field where they were. Yeah, we looked at the most promising needs to build a solution on.
Super. And the video chart. Oh, sorry, the video chat will be recorded or live. If it's recorded and they reach the point to get frustrated, what could be the next option?
Yeah, maybe it's good to mention that in this case, the prototype test was not about design or user flow or functionality. The prototype was only designed to test if this concept was something they would like. So it's more about, do you like the idea of this function? You like the idea of video chat, instead of does this button work, or should it be yes or no, or blue or green? Because we were not there yet. We first had to start with a really rough finding out what people wanted phase.
So what were your insights then?
Yes, well, let's move on to the next slide. So what we found out that the ideal service of the municipality should be like this. It should be simple, because we noticed that the municipality is not a startup. People don't really want to use services of the municipality. They just want it to get over with. We have the proverb in the Netherlands, what a farmer doesn't know, he doesn't eat it. So people just like to, it means that people like to do the things they already know. So they don't want fancy apps, they don't want nice features, they just want to call, they just want to go to the service desk, and that's it. So whatever the municipality should design, it should be really simple. And always keep the option of calling and a real live service desk open, because people like that. Secondly, we found that convenience and effortless was important for all the target audiences, but how they interpret it is different for each of the groups. So for example, for the persons with a minor disability, convenience means that it's really easy for them to use and there's no way they can drop out, because they don't like to spend that much time on it. Sometimes it's really hard for them, takes a lot of energy. So convenience is something that's simple and hassle-free. While for the second target audience, inhabitants with a different cultural backgrounds, or like the adults, like I said, convenience and effortless is more about efficiency, about relevance, something that should work easy and fast, and it helps them with something. And for
Could you give some example of something which is efficient and not efficient from their point of view?
Well, most people like Google Maps, for example, because it's one function, it's really easy. And people don't like those apps where you can do 1 million things with and you don't know how it works, and it just takes space on your phone. It's not relevant. And for seniors, convenience and effortless means that they are doing something familiar, they know how it works, and it's something, it's easy for them. And the third pillar, reassurance and confirmation. And this is something that's needed for all the target audiences, but again, it depends for everybody what it means. So the seniors had some troubles with making mistakes. So you should really confirm them, like, hey, you're doing well, it's safe, you cannot make mistakes. And for the adults and the different cultural backgrounds, reassurance and confirmation is all about giving proof. So when something goes wrong, they're not the ones to blame because they have it on paper. Maybe you know this yourself, like ask for a name. So who did I spoke to? So you can say, well, this person said blah, blah, blah. And for persons with a minor disability, they had a lot of trust issues with the government and big corporates. So for them, it's more about feeling safe and feeling secure.
There is a question. Again, you might have already answered it partially. In this particular project, did you map in the end a journey of the participants, and did you design the blueprint as well?
No, we didn't, because this was about the online services, so it was not one specific journey. So I think that it's possible to create a journey from one service, for example, applying for a new ID or a new passport. But if you take all the services, it's too big and too broad, and all the journeys are different, so you cannot make one journey. However, we made one general journey, and it's just 4 phases. And the general phases we used are fantasizing, planning, scanning, and transaction. And this is basically what every journey has in common. So we use this as a framework.
There is a question. Anand is curious to know if you had any insights that pointed towards using added layers of technology, targeting towards elderly, like voice control, gestures, things like that.
We didn't really go into it. I think this would be a nice topic to research for the second phase, because we know that what's important for them, we know their needs. but we haven't found the perfect solution for them. So this would be something we can do as a second phase. Sure, yeah.
Super.
So let me continue. So like I said all the way in the beginning, we created something simple and easy and something visual. And this model really helped us with this. This is the value pyramid of Bain. Some of you might probably know it. It basically goes like this. If you have the pyramid of Maslow, you might recognize some similarities with it. So in the bottom, you have all the functional needs. So what does this do for me? Then you have the emotional layer. How does this make me feel? Life-changing. How does it change my life? And all the way at the top, you have needs that address social impact. What impact does it have for society? So these are 30 values that customers can have. And we plotted our insights on this pyramid. So if the municipality should design something, should deliver something, they should address the needs. We gave a color in this pyramid. So I think it's pretty small for you to read, but we used 3 different colors. Blue is for inhabitants with a minor disability. Green for inhabitants with a different cultural background, and red for the seniors. So as you can see, in the bottom you have reduced effort. For all of the 3 target audiences, this was really important. So when they used online services of the municipality, they wanted something that reduced their effort, something convenient, like I already explained. And they were all looking for information, they all were also expecting information to be clear, to be personal, to be out there to help them with their problem. I have it on this slide as well. And you see that it also depends on who you're talking to. So the Amsterdam people with a minor mental disability, they wanted something to be simple and easy. And for example, we found that on the website, there were a lot of icons used with the best intentions of the communications department, like, hey, we're going to use icons to make it simple. However, there was some, it was not really helpful for some people. For example, there was this icon for garbage collection, and it was this American trash can. I think you can all make an image in your mind. It was this metal thing with a top lid on it. But in the Netherlands, we don't use those things. We have the kliko's, we call them, so the plastic bins. So this person was looking at the website, and he was like, I don't understand what it means because I don't recognize it. And maybe it's something, I don't know. So sometimes you design something with the best intentions, but it's not simple and clear for your audience. So these are all the needs we found. For example, the last one, affiliation and belonging. This one was really important for the different cultural backgrounds, because like I said, they want to be seen and heard and acknowledged as an Amsterdam people and not as a person with a specific background. So yeah, those were the needs we found. And what I really like about this thing is that when I came back to the municipality after my work was done, they are still using these needs as a guiding principle. So everything they're designing right now, the new services, they do a check. Is this solution reducing risk? Is it providing access? Is it tapping into self-actualization or not? Because they know this is something that inhabitants are looking for as a municipality.
Super. Serena, there is a question, which is, why is it important to map the needs on this pyramid?
Well, it's not really important, but it really helped me to create something that's easy and visual, because you can also make a really big report with a lot of text. But for me, I always like visual things. And this model helped me to do it.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I can share my experience.
Yeah, sure.
When you come up with the ideas, you usually, after you learn the disadvantages of the service, you tend to focus too much on the functional level. And this pyramid actually forces you to think outside the functionality, think about the emotions, think about self-actualization, etc. So it's not only helping to present it, but it also forces you to think more about the different type of needs of the customer.
Yeah, well said. So I think we can move on to my very last slides. So if you are doing something like this yourself, if you want to start with a sprint like we did, I have 3 words of advice for you. The first thing is talk to real customers, because I had so many assumptions before, and when sitting on those couches and drinking their tea and getting to know these people, I was really surprised. And I remember that I had this picture in my mind of my own granny. My own grandmother, I think she's never seen a smartphone in her life. And then me meeting a person, an 80-year-old lady, she was awesome. She just used the latest virus technology to clean her computer and to do everything with it. And I was really amazed. So talk to your customers. And also the second point, be aware of your own bias and your own assumptions, because you don't know what you don't know. And always have a blank mind, and yeah, just embrace uncertainty. You don't know everything, so let's be surprised. And lastly, whatever you do, if you find a solution, test it as soon as possible, because it will save you a lot of time and money. First, figure out if it's something that customers actually want before you're gonna ask the development department to build it and to spend some time on it. So this was my presentation, and I think I see the chat running. Oleg, what are the questions?
Were elderly people open to share negative feedback? Or were they polite and trying not to offend you and people from municipality?
I think Dutch people are also more direct. So this helped us as well. But they were negative as well, yeah, unfortunately. Mm-hmm.
Was it difficult?
No, some people, it really helped to ask them about their own experience. So we asked some people to show us their phone and to explain what kind of apps they used. And therefore it was really easy for them to say, I don't like this app, because they had something to talk about. So if you ask them point blank, what do you like and don't like about online services? It's a super complicated question. But if you have something like an app, or we use diary studies, it's easier to uncover all those needs. I have a picture in it right here. And you see this little booklet on the right. It's called the generative technique. This is like a homework exercise. We sent them to the interviewees beforehand to let them think about the topic, to get familiar with it, and to already answer some questions. And that way we have something to talk about during the interview.
Super, thank you. Were you filming them during those interviews, or you were just taking notes?
We were recording it for our own purpose, so we could have another listen to it and to write everything down again. And we also used the audio snippets for the final presentations, because it really helps you to convince stakeholders. So then it's not just me, Serena, having an opinion. It's really this customer, this inhabitant saying something.
Then there are 2 questions. Both are very good. You can choose the order. One is, what are the final outputs for these target groups? So the outputs you produced by the sprint, and what was the toughest challenge for the whole project? What was the most difficult part?
The final output was our research findings. So like I said, the basic customer journey, the pyramids, our insights, but also our prototype results. So we had some basic understanding, you could say, about the problem fits. And we also had some directions for the solution. So what works and what didn't work. So it was easy for the department of municipality to build on top of our research and to do their own research themselves.
What was the challenge?
To do everything in a limited time of 10 days. Oh man, long days. Yeah. It was just me and another service designer. Yeah, and we had to analyze all those research and to make decisions while we were working for the whole day already, and we had a deadline. But it was great fun. We did a lot in those days.
Super, thank you. How many interviews of interview testing prototype you did?
Yeah, we did 15 interviews in total, so 5 for each target audience, the prototyping. And this was what we did, but the municipality did some prototyping themselves afterwards.
Thank you. Can you talk more about your work with the city? How they actually initiated the project? So what were the, I don't know, design brief or whatever? How they came to you, or you came to them, and then what was their role within the project? How they collaborated with you?
Well, we met the municipality during a training because we often do guest lectures at universities, and we were speaking at Nijero, the business university, and 2 of the employees were part of this training, so we got in touch with them, and they were already very interested in service design, and I think the level of service design is already quite high on some departments. And this department wanted to learn more about service design. So we worked really closely with them. We invited them in our sprint rooms to make decisions together, to come with us during the home visits for the interviews. And at the same time, they wanted to use the results for their own purposes to make something that's more inclusive, something that can actually be used by the city, by all the inhabitants, create something that people actually like.
They sound like an ideal client. Serena, thank you very much. Many questions, and there is a question from Katya actually, is what happened after the service design phase? What do they do now with your outcomes?
Yeah, that's always interesting because as a consultant, you don't always know what they're doing with it. But 3 months ago, I was invited for an event they organized, and they are still working with inclusivity a lot. And I was a speaker there, and I showed them a presentation to more people. And they had this, they started with interacting with more municipalities in the Netherlands to keep this inclusivity discussion going. So this is one thing they did, but they also started more prototype trials. So they were doing some trials prototyping for a tool because we realized that a lot of elderly people get a letter at home and they don't understand it. So they call the customer support like, hey, I have this form, I don't get it. Can you help me? But for them, it's really hard to understand what they have in front of them. So they tried this tool where you can log into your phone and you can take over and see what they're doing. Or on your computer, they can take over your screen and see what everybody's typing. And they were prototyping if this was the right solution. However, they discovered that people are really afraid of safety and hackers, and there were a lot of issues. But this was a really good learning because they knew this before they were developing it. So they learned from their prototype test. Yeah.
You should advise them that they should prototype and test the documents, not the way to help with the document later.
Yeah, well, they're doing a great job with that already. Yeah.
Super. For everybody, we will have a great case on this Sunday. Angelica from Colombia will be showing us the legal design case on how to actually design the documents people can understand.
Cool, nice.
There is a good reflection question to the end of our discussion is, what would you do differently in this design sprint now that you know more about the project and now that you have an experience?
I think for me personally, in the beginning when we started with the research, we didn't know what we were looking for. And the first sprint was a bit hard because we didn't know what kind of model to use. Are we doing something that's relevant? Are we doing something that we can use at the end? And so if I would do it again, I already know the route. So it would be much easier because I already practiced it and I already tried it. And I think for the second thing I would do differently is maybe talk to more people instead of just the 3 target audiences, because I still have the feeling that we can learn a lot more from like, yeah, just perhaps 18-year-olds or different like educational level, or I don't know what we don't know, and I would love to learn more about it.
Super, thank you. Uh, well, I don't see more new question coming. So first of all, I would like to thank you on behalf of the whole audience, because you shared a great case, and you also, well, give a lot of insights and all a lot of details behind the scene, how everything was done. So thank you very much. I would like also to thank to everybody who attended, especially people from the very different time zones. Some of you probably already in tomorrow. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining. And our marathon will be continuing in the future. We will do tomorrow. And tomorrow we actually have a great speaker from Canada, Chris Ferguson, who is the founder of Bridgeable, one of the famous Canadian service design agency. And he will be talking on one side on the case, basically the award-winning case. They won a service design award with it. But at the same time, he will be showing on this case how service design might help us to design the future after the COVID-19. So it's going to be an interesting lecture. I encourage you to share our event so more people join us every night and more people learn about human centricity. Don't be shy to invite your customers and your competitors. Together we will be a stronger community.